Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel and my series on Accutane. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my first month on Accutane. From week 1 to week 4, all of the symptoms that I had, the positives and the negatives behind taking this medication. We're going to get into all of it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, I do have a piece of paper here with a bunch of notes because I wanted to make sure I was sharing every nitty-gritty detail with you guys. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at this piece of paper right here. So for my first month, my dermatologist decided to put me on 60 milligrams of Accutane. More specifically, the brand Myorsin. That was the brand that was covered by my insurance company. My 60 milligram dosage was broken up into two 30 milligram pills a day. I took one in the morning and I took one in the evening. Because my inflammation was so severe, my dermatologist also put me on 20 milligrams of prednisone. I took this medication for the duration of my first month on Accutane. Here are some pictures of what my skin looked like on my first day of Accutane. Obviously, you're not going to see any sort of progress or changes at this point because it does take a while for your body to adjust to this medication. Normally, you don't really see results from Accutane until about the third month of treatment. Prior to starting Accutane, I knew that there were a lot of different side effects that I could expect to experience throughout the duration of my treatment, but I didn't really expect to experience them so soon. After only taking the medication for 1 full week, I already started experiencing some symptoms. The first symptoms that I remember experiencing were really dry lips. They weren't starting to peel or crack at this point, but I definitely noticed an increased need for hydration. I also started to have a really dry nose, specifically on this outer portion of my nose, really similar to how dry your nose gets when you have a cold and your nose is super runny and you're blowing it a lot with a tissue. That sort of dry crustiness was starting to happen on this outer portion of my nose. My skin was also really sensitive to the touch. It hurt to just touch my face. When I was washing my face, my skin hurt. When I was sleeping, my skin hurt. My face hurt all of the time. My skin was also really itchy. Itchy to the point where I would cover my entire face in a thick lather of moisturizer and then stick on pieces of toilet paper to try and soothe my skin and prevent me from scratching it in the middle of the night, because I would literally wake up scratching at my skin, and I had huge cysts, so scratching led to bleeding, and I would wake up some mornings with blood all over my pillowcase. I tried to use cortisone cream on my face. I later learned that that was probably not the best idea, but even that didn't help soothe the itching. Really nothing was soothing the itching. It was at points unbearable and making me feel like I was going to go insane. I also had some new breakouts, which is of course something to expect when you're starting Accutane. I also noticed that I was very thirsty, which Accutane is a medication that causes you to dry out from the inside out. So I'm not shocked that I felt dehydrated a lot of the time. During the first week, I also experienced hot flashes, particularly at night after I would take my medication. I would start to feel really overwhelmingly warm, and after a couple of minutes it would pass. But that's something interesting that I noticed as well. And here are some pictures from my face at the end of my first week of Accutane. As you can see, still very inflamed, very red, very irritated. Not much change from day 1, which of course is not to be expected. At the end of week 2 of Accutane, I was able to identify some more symptoms that I was beginning to experience. I was still having all of the symptoms from week 1, the dry lips, dry nose, sensitive skin, hot flashes, but I had a few more side effects that had emerged. Not only was my skin dry now, but my skin was also starting to peel. This is a super common side effect of Accutane. All of the side effects that I've listed thus far are very common side effects of Accutane, but peeling skin sounds kind of scary, but it's not unheard of when it comes to taking this medication. And what I mean by peeling skin is not that my skin would literally peel off and that you could see my flesh, but the sort of peeling skin that you experience after you have a sunburn, where there's just that gentle little layer of skin that comes off. And it was specifically happening on my acne, not on other parts of my face. And now at the end of week 2, not only was my face dry, but my scalp was very dry and very itchy. Just like how my face was unbearably itchy, my scalp would be unbearably itchy. I had very severe dandruff at this point, as my scalp was super dry and really peely. No matter how much conditioner I put up in my hair, it did not resolve the itchiness. Week 2 was also when I experienced my first bloody nose. I only ever had 3 or 4 throughout the duration of my Accutane treatment, and I only really experienced these at the beginning of treatment. But week 2 was when I had my first one. It wasn't anything super severe, it was just simply because the inside of my nose was so severely dry, and it didn't last very long. My eyes were also really tired and dry all of the time. I was putting in eye drops super consistently because my eyes were just like scratchy dry. And I was also just overall really exhausted. My body was really taking a toll from this medication. I did have some positives to note regarding my skin at the end of week 2. I noticed that the first purge was starting to calm down a little bit. I definitely still had pimples, but I wasn't getting as many new pimples at this point in time. Of course, this was going to change really soon, but these are just the things that I noted at the end of week 2. Also, I felt like the side effects were still really manageable, even though the itchiness of the scalp and the itchiness of the skin felt unbearable at times. I still felt like these weren't reasons to stop taking the medication. I also felt like my overall redness had improved minorly, and people were starting to take note that my skin was starting to heal a little bit more. Week 3 was also the week of my 23rd birthday, which was really exciting because, wow, I'm 23, but it also was hard. Being a person who was struggling with such severe cystic acne in the middle of a pandemic, it was not an easy combination, to say the least, and probably wouldn't be what I would declare my best birthday by any means. This week, once again, I had the same symptoms continuing from week 1 and week 2, but I did start to experience 2 additional symptoms at this point. The first was lower back pain. It wasn't any sort of severe lower back pain, but the sort of pain that you get from being on your feet all day. In order to combat this, I would just take a Tylenol and I would be perfectly fine. I did also start to experience rashes on the back of my hands at this point. As time progressed, the rashes sort of grew and changed, but at this stage, the rashes were just on this portion of my hand, and they were some tiny red dots. They were itchy and they were dry, and I later on learned that it was actually eczema. I did experience some negatives this week. The itchiness was really starting to get to me at the end of week 3, especially on my face. I just felt like I was being tortured with how itchy my skin was. No matter what I did, there was nothing that I could do to fix it. It felt like I was just living in a perpetual hell of itchiness. And I was also feeling really discouraged this week because I felt like my cysts were looking super large, as they kind of were all molding into one ginormous cyst on both sides of my temples, down my jawline on both sides, down my cheekbones. I just felt like a walking pimple this week. It was very hard. I think a lot of anxiety and a lot of depressive thoughts were getting to me with it being my birthday and being stuck at home and feeling really discouraged in my appearance. Week 4 and the final week of my first month on Accutane, I met with my dermatologist and he decided that I would continue on 60 milligrams for my second month on Accutane. And he also decided that I would start weaning off of prednisone going into my second month. This meant that I would be taking prednisone for my second month of Accutane, but I would be tapering off the medication. So that way my third month, I would be entirely off of prednisone. At this stage, my dermatologist was really happy with my progress. You could see here in these pictures, in a comparison from week 1 to week 4, that There was some slight changes that happened, and he was really happy because normally people don't really see any changes at this stage. I feel like a lot of it also has to do with having been put on prednisone because that reduced a lot of the inflammation, which was the whole point of being put on prednisone. But I certainly think that without that, I would not have seen the progress that I saw during my first month of Accutane. Week 4, I didn't have any new symptoms to report. I was still struggling with all of the same symptoms I previously listed throughout the first 3 weeks, but I was prescribed a topical cream from my dermatologist to help combat the rashes that I was having on the backs of my hands. And it was only when I needed to use it. He said it was eczema, he confirmed that diagnosis, and he indicated that I only needed to use the prescription cream if I really felt like the itchiness was getting to me. Otherwise, it wasn't necessary, and he indicated that it would go away on its own once I finished taking the medication. I was still feeling discouraged this week, ending this month with the itchiness and the purging that was happening with my skin. I started to notice more breakouts coming to the surface, which is not unusual with Accutane. You do experience a pretty solid and severe purge. I was a little naive to think that purging was done by week 2. I think I was overly optimistic, but I was definitely experiencing some positives at the end of my first month on Accutane. I was really starting to grow in the acne positivity and skin positivity communities, and I felt really empowered by all of the love and all of the support from you guys and from people in that community. I was starting to really feel beautiful in who I was and not held back because of my appearance. I was really enjoying all of the support and love and all of the positive comments and all of the interaction with you guys. I feel like that made me end my month 1 on a super positive note. And that's how my first month on Accutane went. I think it's really important to note that everybody reacts differently to the medication and everybody's treatment plan is different when it comes to Accutane. But this is what I personally experienced during my first month. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful for any of you out there that are nervous to start taking Accutane or are currently in the thick of it. I'm sending you all of the love in the world and hoping that you feel empowered in who you are, that you recognize the true beauty that you hold within you, and learn that your acne does not define you or hold you back from accomplishing anything in life. You can be exactly who you're meant to be and have pimples. There's no shame. You are not dirty. You are not unclean. You are not unworthy. You are uniquely beautiful. And this time in your life serves a purpose. As silly as that might sound, as frustrating as that might sound, please know that this experience will make you stronger. And the scars that you bear are an example of the battles that you fought for your own happiness. So I'm sending you all of the love in the world. I'll see you guys in my next video where we'll go over month 2 of Accutane.